dedicated to horror, scary stories, scary videos, and all things creepy. Subscribe, like, share the darkness. I think we're all afraid to die. And I don't think it's just the fear of the unknown. It's because we're afraid that we'll go to hell. And tonight's story is about just such a man that goes to the place that I believe we are all afraid to go. I found this website that it was actually an organization that specializes in the research of near-death experiences. And as such, they have cataloged like thousands of these stories. And I was looking in particular for negative and distressing near-death experiences. And I came across this story, which was sent in by a man who wishes to remain anonymous. But we're going to call him Rick just for the purposes of telling this story. So, Rick had a friend named Gareth, and on this particular day, they had come together. They were hanging out, and Gareth had his father's car, which he wasn't supposed to have that day, and he had been drinking. Now, Rick found himself in this situation where it was really late, and he needed to get home, and against his better judgment, he let Gareth offer him a lift. So they go on this drive, and the whole way they're arguing. And Gareth supposedly had this, like, he was a bit of a nut, and one of the things that he would do to, I guess, get his way or shut up whoever he was arguing with was he would, put the pedal to the metal and just soar off and pull a Yui. And so that's what he does. But unfortunately, they end up wrecking the car, and according to Rick's testimony, the next thing he remembers is waking up on a stretcher, and, his upper torso is all very much in pain. Then everything goes black. And ironically, this is where his most vivid memory comes from. It's because he died. A lot of people, once they die and they go into the other side, it feels more real than real. Everything, like your senses are heightened, your vision is spectacular, your hearing, everything is just through the roof. So he found himself in complete blackness. He said it was so black that it was so dark you could cut it with a knife. And he felt like somebody had just pulled a rug out from under him, and he just fell, free fall, into this black void. And as he fell, he could hear the cries and screams from other people all around him, screaming in agony, crying, calling out to God. And amongst all of this, he could hear laughter. And he was terrified. And he fell, and eventually he hits bottom. And he said it was just this big crack. He was in immense pain, and he was in a sea of fire. And when he stood up and he began to kind of, I guess, get his bearings, he said there was these creatures. And the only way he could describe them is to say they looked distorted. And so these creatures came for him. They grabbed him, and they pulled him towards what he said was black pearly gates. And they were yanking him, pulling at him, and they knew things about him that nobody should know. Secrets nobody should know. The vulnerable things that his deep secrets. And they were taunting him with those secrets. They were torturing him mentally and physically. They began to rip his flesh apart. They began to rip into his back and just rip him apart. And as they did this, he said, the pain was such that he felt he was going to vomit. And it continued and continued until he found himself at some point, he could see out into the vast area around him. And there were many, many other people, and these people were being tortured just as he was by these creatures. And as they're dragging him and they're still pulling at him and taunting him, he actually sees out into this space, he actually sees his friend Gareth. And Gareth is hung upside down. He's hung upside down, and they have these nails put through his hands and feet. And Rick explained it that he imagined that it was a mockery of what had happened to Jesus. And as Gareth hung upside down, these creatures were all around him, and they were chanting something in another tongue. And at the same time, there was some of these creatures, and they had these whips, and they were whipping at him. And the fires had gone up on whatever this thing was he was tied to, and it was burning through him. And Rick said he could see the expression on Gareth's face, like he was screaming out to God, he was screaming out to Buddha, any deity that he could think of. And he saw Rick there, but there was nothing Rick could do either. So as Gareth has continued to call out, Rick said he could see Gareth's skin had begun to melt and peel off. And Rick was in agony himself. In fact, it was around this point where he began to really feel the fires burn his body as well. And so he began to call out. He was calling out to God. He was calling out to all the deities. Anybody or anything that could possibly hear him and pull him out. But instead what happened was he woke up. He woke up in the hospital, and it's at this time that he's told that Gareth didn't make it. So Rick got to go on in his life. He got to reassess whatever it was that he did that got him there in the first place. But he's also haunted by the fact that his friend Gareth is most likely still in that very same place, never to return again.